Bit of an intro on myself, so I'm Luke Andrews. Great to follow on from Claire, actually. I'm an API product manager. Spent 4.5 or so years working with government whilst I was at IBM on what do APIs mean for government, how do we do it at scale. And Jackie Legater is talking about that this afternoon, so do go and check out her talk as well. But what am I doing today? I'm now a product at 10x Banking. We are a core banking platform, cloud native, all the jazz words around it. Build your core banking in the cloud, and it's API and event driven. Today I'm going to talk you through a bit of a learning journey that I've been on over the last 16 months or so about how I knew a lot about APIs, and particularly in government, but how I've taken that through to core banking. This is the point where it doesn't work. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about API-led core banking and how this is going to unlock the ecosystem for banks. And also, similar to what Pinar was saying earlier about how it will change the face of banks and how brand is probably going to become as important as anything. So I'll talk about the history of core banking and cover off what it is, take it back to first principles, which is, I guess, good best practice for all product managers, and then how the core unlocks their ecosystem. So what does core banking actually look after? It looks after your brands as a bank. Most banks in the UK have multiple brands. Lloyds have Halifax, Royal Bank of Scotland, the same for many other banks. It also looks after your financial products. So these are your current accounts, your mortgages, your loans, and all of the features that you have against those. What's the interest rate, are there any eligibility rules, etc. It also manages your customers and the customer records, capturing all the information you need to understand them and work with them. Once you've got your financial products and your customers, you can unlock accounts, which is obviously what we all have with our various financial institutions today. Following accounts, you have transactions, and transactions could be a transaction to pay off your mortgage, a transaction to send money to your friend, any sort of transaction. Whenever there's transactions involved, there's calculations, and these calculations are things like, as a bank, how much interest am I paying out on a daily basis? How much interest am I making on a daily basis? These are really key, important things, along with a whole raft of other things like tax and all the not so exciting things that we have to put up with. It's been relatively untouched for the last 50 years. So entered a new era of banking in the 70s, and everyone went off and built their own core banks, really bespoke, really unique. And that hasn't really changed. We haven't really changed what core banking is today. If we look into the 90s, what happened was the bank said, we've got this core bank, but actually we want to launch mortgages and do something new in mortgages. So we spun up the second core bank, exactly the same technology, exactly the same problems. And my clicker does not like me today. So we added another core bank to the problem. And then all we've done over that time is put it on bigger tin, make it slightly more efficient, and tweak around the edges. We've never actually tackled the core. There we go. So then we started tinkering with abstraction layers, and this is what has happened in the last 10 years or so. So to improve the back office, we put these abstraction layers in place, this screen scraping, all of the things that don't really give us much innovation. The same for our front office staff and the same for our customers. What does this mean? The impact is our ability to innovate is really, really limited where we are today. The cost of change is pretty outrageous. To launch a current account in the UK, it can take 18 months and £20 million due to some regulation, yes, some marketing, but a lot of technical changes that need to be made across all those multiple areas. And your speed to market is really, really inhibited. New entrants to the market, I'm not going to name names, we all know many of them. They're much faster, they're much leaner, and they're passing on those costs to their savings to their customers. So they can offer better products, better rates to really draw in and grow market share. And if you think about it really simply, would you turn up to the F1 today with an engine that was built in 1970? You just wouldn't do it. So my job was to take things back to first principles and understand what is it that banks really need to do. They need to launch new innovative products to market so they can grow their share and maintain their balance sheet. They need to service their customers to delight them. Not only their customers, but also their colleagues. How many times have you heard on the end of the phone, let me just log into this system, or the system's being a bit too slow today. All these pain points that are not just affecting customers, but also our colleagues in a bank. We also need to understand our customers and the products, how are our products performing, how are our customers using them, what's the uptake, amongst many, many other things. We then want to act on the insight that we draw from that. So if our product isn't performing particularly well, what can we increase the interest rate? Can we offer some new rewards, some new fees, or take away some fees? And then ultimately, banks want to scale the model, whether that's moving into new geos, to new segments, or simply just scaling up across the market. So launching new and innovative products, what does this actually mean? It doesn't mean paying me £200 to come and use your bank account through the current account switching service. It means doing something actually different. And if we think about products, and this is speaking with product managers in banks, they look at products as just a load of features that they sort of pull together to build financial products. So if you look at a loan, buy now, pay later, and one of the most innovative or last innovative things in the market, which was offset mortgages, they are just a set of features and building blocks. And actually what companies have come to the market to do is to innovate around some of these red boxes. So why is there a reason that actually, if you offset a mortgage, why can't you offset a loan? And why can't you offer interest against the savings that you're using as collateral? Why can't you do that? If we look at, could we pay out interest on a positive balance of a buy now, pay later account? Why can't we do that? And as you'll see, there's many different things that you can do. But today, we cannot do it because we're stuck in the silos of, I want to build a loan and launch a loan in a bank. I want to build a mortgage and launch a mortgage in a bank. And as everyone knows, Conway's law is the thing that teaches us about that. Our systems match the shape of our organization. Many, many other examples that I'm going to skip through in the interest of time. But then if we go on to the next thing that banks really need to do, which is to service our customers and make that easy for colleagues. No more swivel chairing. Many new channels coming on board, and we heard earlier how branches were a thing of the past, and all these new channels coming online. And as a customer, I want to share documentation. I want to be able to have phone conversations. To be honest, the way I like to work is I want to send you a message. You come back to me when you solve it. All this is done great for a CRM system, but all that swivel chairing really makes it a poor experience for customers and colleagues today. With a modern core banking platform that manages those key assets, where it's API-driven with a single central data source that comes out the back of it, this is a really, really easy job to do. And we've done this with banks across the globe. The events at the bottom make sure that the CRM is always up to date with the latest and what's changing. You can see an audit history of everything that you've done with that customer, making the interaction more personal, more personalized, more engaging, and ultimately serving better outcomes. The next piece is understanding the company, and we've spoken about data, and data can come in many shapes and forms. But it's really these events, and everyone must have heard of event-driven architecture. As something changes on the platform, we emit an event to let the rest of the platform know that what's happened, what's changed, so they can take an action on that. One of the biggest problems we have is there's loads of junk data in our systems today. We've got the mortgage core bank. We've got the commercial core bank. They've all got different data. My name's probably in 3 of those different systems. It's a right pain to get in. We have teams that cleanse data and get it into shape. But if we could just have a single central data store, that would make everyone's lives a lot easier to check those key entities that you can see on the screen. And once you've got the data, you can really become a data-driven company. What does that mean for a bank? How is my market? How am I doing in the market? How's my product performing? How many accounts have I opened in the last 3 minutes? How did that marketing campaign go? We're not talking about 12 hours after the fact. We're talking about right here and right now. We're talking about ops and fraud. How many times do you find out that your payment has been held for fraud or whatever reason or declined? It goes off to a team who then look at it and make a decision, and it goes through a few hours later. Why can that not be real time today? And it can if you have access to this data that you can push into the right systems. Risk and compliance. If I've suddenly started spending £500 more in the past few months, do you still want to lend to me? And yes, today they have access to some of this information, but you can really use this data to improve your risk models and also comply to standards. And then the final point is really interesting, and personalization and segment of one. I'm expecting a baby next year. You'll see I'm starting to spend more money on baby clothes and in baby retailers than I am in the pub, for example. If you're able to understand that and make an action and take an action on that in real time, Maybe you could offer me cashback on baby purchases. These are the kind of things that segment of one really means. We spoke about it for a decade, but actually making it happen the time is really now. And then scaling the model, this can mean many different things to many different banks. But what it means for me and the customers I've spoken to is either growing your existing client base. If we go back to that model a moment ago where we put things on bigger tin, generally for about 3 or 4 hours a day, they actually run at 100% utilization. The rest of the day, they're running at about 20%. Highly, highly inefficient, not particularly scalable because you're already reaching 100%. You're tied into long contracts, it's really inflexible. It doesn't make your business as agile as it needs to be today. But growing your existing customer base in the cloud is just deploying more instances of your platform, deploying more instances of those pods, whatever it may be. It's no longer a case of procuring some tin, standing it up, and all of the pain that comes along with that. Moving into new segments, this is one of the easiest ways for banks to really expand and grow their market presence. To move into a new segment, you need to create some new products, and you need to probably think about your customer data model to check you're capturing all of the information, maybe add business entity into there. But actually, if you look at it at its most basic level, you work with 2 of those 3 things, make some minor changes, and you're off to the races. This is what APIs enable you to do. That top layer being standardized and consistent, and that bottom layer giving you all of the changes that are happening. That, for me, is really powerful. And then moving into new geos. This can be challenging. There may be some data regulations that you need to abide by. You may need to move into a new cloud. Again, if at infrastructure level, deploy it into wherever you need to be. You've got the same standardized, consistent APIs, the same standardized, consistent microservices sitting around it. Makes life a whole lot easier. I think I'm doing pretty good for time, so you might get to lunch a bit earlier. So what does a modern core bank look like? A modern core bank has a gateway at the top that does all of the things that we all know, authorization, checking who you are, what you're doing, rate limiting, all those good things to protect your services. Then it looks like these things in the middle. You've got a whole raft of things that go on within them, but you've got some standardized, consistent interfaces, and then you've got those events at the bottom. Really, we've probably built those event streams at the bottom in the current banks, but they're all sitting around the edges and really limiting the impact that you can have. This enables banks to really focus on configuring and launching innovative products to market. And if you look at the slide I put up earlier with those red circles, just changing one of those circles on a loan, a buy now, pay later, a current account, really opens you up to new possibilities. You can think about experience, and actually what banks have done is they've set these abstraction layers up around the edges. And what that means is that we're actually starting to see a bit of a plateau in customer experience in banking apps. If you're looking at HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, Halifax, Cap One, all relatively the same experience as a customer. Yes, I can look at my subscription payments. Yes, I can get some basic graphs and data back. But really, if the bank could choose where they invest their time, it would be far more an experience than it would be managing the horrible back end that they're stuck with today and the tech debt. They can then improve on service and the service they give us as customers and make their colleagues' lives easier. And this is the key thing, is brand. So you're probably thinking, how does this tie into the ecosystem? But we've heard talks today and yesterday about how brand is probably one of the important things that banks do have. And one of the things that customers trust the most. And to put that into, I guess, real terms, some banks are offering you 0.05% interest, but you still have an account with them and you still bank with them because of the brand and the trust that comes along with that. And that's really what banks need to focus on as they go forward. So how do you win in this model? You have a really standardized, easy to understand, easy to work with core bank in the middle, and then that enables you to integrate with the ecosystem. We've heard about how there's so much innovation happening in the payment space, in the identity verification space. Someone mentioned on FIDO earlier around identity verification and know your customer checks. That's how you win. You build a platform that is easy to integrate with all those leading, market-leading solutions, rather than building them in-house. And that's where the modern core banking platform unlocks the wider ecosystem, So you can see that in Monzo, you can now do international payments using wires. They're not trying to build these things where they know that they can just go to someone else who has the best solution and integrate that with the platform to give you, the customer, the best experience. And I could have added tons more to this slide, and it does come to an end in a second. But what you really want to do is use your brand, have an easy-to-manage core platform, take out your technical debt, and then use the best in-market solutions. And that brings me to the end of my slide, so I am pretty much on time.
Excellent.
And that is how you do API-led core banking.
Thank you very much, Hugo. They're really, really fascinating. So yesterday, my company, we published a report on UK open banking APIs and their performance. And one of the interesting things was the neobanks at the top, who obviously had their own brand new core bank, absolutely wiped the floor with the competition. Next level, the CMA9, the big banks, clearly threw tin at the problem.
Yep.
And they could afford to throw tin and engineers, and it just worked. The real risk that we could see, because it was so stark, is the smaller banks just couldn't throw more tin at the problem, couldn't throw more engineers, and you could see that their APIs were running at half the speed. They were less reliable. They had more problems. It does seem to be a real problem with this. I know there are systems that some of our customers, when they monitor their APIs, they're calling that are older than me, and I'm not very young. And that seems to be a real problem with core banking, that it's older than people think.
Most definitely, and it brings problems around talent. The talent is not there to maintain it. A whole raft of regulatory risk that comes along with that. I think you actually have a massive, you hit it down on the head about inequality. We talk about financial inequality, but technical inequality is something that's got a vast chasm in the UK. You've got lots of building societies and like the smaller players in the market that they can't invest millions every year, as you just said.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We should talk afterwards, because the data is very stark for them, and they need to worry about that. Not to monopolise Luke, though. Questions, please. Right in the middle.
Yeah, so interesting analogy earlier on between Formula One and race cars, and it feels like slightly different in Formula One engines, the things you're mentioning. You have certain dates a year you need to use your product, and huge periods in between it. And some of the big issues around banks and pieces nowadays is that the small period of outage. I think is a huge difference. So how do you think and approach that change from monolith to some new architecture when there can be the challenges we just spoke about maintenance and people understanding it?
Yeah, I think the first decision is build or buy, and generally today, that is the most important decision to make, because that then is going to really impact how you would approach migration, moving on to something new, and what I would always do, and I've always done, is start small. So what is it that we can get on here really quickly? We're not talking months, we're talking days and weeks. Can we create 3 financial products on there? Can we then integrate our system, see how this thing is going to work? And can we launch it with an alpha of customers and just give it a go and see? That's the real thing about, we don't need to be huge batch migrations on day one of getting onto the platform. Start small, prove the value, and then over time you would start to, shift your workload over to the new platform. There's ways and means, not just API-based, but infrastructure level, that makes that easy. We have tools, other companies have tools to make it easy for you. So if I've got the question right, the migration piece and managing that risk is really tough. I would spin up a small team and start small and go from there. And that's what I've done in the past, in past roles in different industries. I don't know, was that helpful in answer the question?
Yeah, probably one small follow-up. In that case, do you start as close to the front-end experience you can go backwards, starting with some form of internal tool, you might find the same problem of support and able to change and migrate before?
Yeah, I would always start with the customer experience. I think the reason that's important is because that's what should drive all your technology decisions, ideally. What is the customer experience? Obsess about that and work backwards. So, yeah.
Well, I think just interjecting the Formula One analogy is interesting, but with the way open banking in the UK has been implemented and in other regions, it's almost like the regulator has said, you must take part in Formula One, and somebody's turned up with a McLaren with a top-notch engine, and somebody else is doing it in a Ford Focus.
Yeah.
And you've got to go and compete, but you have to go and compete with your car. and you can't just go out and buy another one.
Exactly. That's that's probably a better analogy. I walked past the McLaren office this morning and saw it in there and thought I need to add that in. So.